John List appeared to be the perfect son, husband, and father. He worked hard as an accountant to provide for his family. The Westfield, New Jersey mansion, where he lived with his mother, wife, and 3 children had 19 rooms, including a ballroom, marble fireplaces, and a Tiffany skylight. List and his family were the embodiment of the American dream in the early 1970s. They attended church every Sunday as devout Lutherans, and List even taught Sunday school. Everything appeared great on the surface. Tragically, however, almost nothing was as it seemed. In 1971, 46-year-old John List lost his job at a New Jersey bank. He tried to find new employment, but nothing panned out. List couldn't bear to tell his family about the loss of income, so he just kept pretending to go to work each morning. List spent his days at the train station, reading the newspaper and secretly skimming money from his mother's bank accounts to pay the mortgage. He refused to go on welfare, as it would entail excruciating embarrassment in the community and violate the principles of self-sufficiency that he'd learned from his father. It's hard to believe the solution he arrived at would have been more acceptable to his dad, but John List would later say it seemed to him the only option, unaliving his mother, wife, and children. On November 9, 1971, John List unalived his wife, Helen, his 16-year-old daughter, Patricia, his 15-year-old son, John, his 13-year-old son, Frederick, and his mother, Alma, aged 85. He methodically unalived them one by one. Helen was first. List saw the children off to school and then unalived her in the kitchen as she sipped her usual morning coffee. Then, he went up to the 3rd floor and unalived his mother in her bed. He unalived Patricia and his youngest son, Frederick, when they returned home from school. Then, he made himself a sandwich, closed out his bank accounts, and cheered for his other son, John, at his high school soccer game. He gave him a ride home and then unalived him. With his entire family unalived, John List then set out to escape justice for his grisly crimes. John List laid his family members on top of sleeping bags in the ballroom and then composed a note to his pastor, who he felt would understand his actions. He feared his family, confronted with a world full of evil and poverty, would turn from God. Unaliving them was the only way to secure their spot in heaven. List was not, however, willing to suffer the earthly consequences of his actions. In an effort to baffle the police, he cleaned the crime scene and used scissors to remove his face from every photo in the mansion. He canceled all deliveries and contacted his children's schools to let their teachers know the family would be on vacation for a few weeks. He turned on the lights and the radio, leaving religious hymns playing in the house's empty rooms. He slept in the mansion where his family lay unalived. Then he walked out the door the next morning and wasn't seen again for 18 years. A month passed before neighbors, curious about the constantly burning lights and empty windows, began to suspect something was wrong at the List mansion. When authorities entered the home on December 7, 1971, they heard organ music pipe through the intercom system. They also found the 5-page note from John List explaining that the bodies on the ballroom floor were his family members, unalived out of mercy. He had saved the souls of the people he loved. The FBI found his car parked at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City, but there was no trace of List. The trail quickly came to an end. Though the List family unaliving case had gone cold early on, New Jersey prosecutors refused to give up on their hunt for justice. In 1989, they came up with an idea. They contacted Michael Linder, the executive producer of America's Most Wanted, and told him about the case. Linder was intrigued, but he wanted to ensure that he had an updated image of John List to air on the program, as so many years had passed since the unalivings. It seemed to me that it was a job for Frank Bender, Linder told a source in 1989. Bender was an expert forensic artist, and he agreed to create a physical bust of John List as Bender imagined he might have aged. Bender gave him a hawk nose, grizzled eyebrows, and horn-rimmed glasses. Psychologists theorized that List would wear the same spectacles he'd donned as a younger man to remind him of his more successful days. It was a masterful depiction of John List. When America's Most Wanted aired the story of the unalivings on May 21, 1989, an audience of 20 million saw Frank Bender's sculpture. Tips came pouring in. One came from a woman in Richmond, Virginia, who thought her next-door neighbor, Robert Clark, bore a striking resemblance to the bust. The tipster said her neighbor was also an accountant and attended church. Authorities went to Clark's home and spoke to his wife, whom he'd met at a church social gathering in 1977 and married in 1985. Her story put an end to the 18-year-long mystery. It turned out that List had changed his identity and moved to Colorado under the assumed name Robert Clark. The alias worked, and he'd kept it when he moved to Richmond. Police in Virginia arrested John List on June 1, 1989, a mere 10 days after America's Most Wanted aired his case. At his trial in 1990, defense lawyers argued that List suffered from PTSD from his military service in World War II and Korea. Expert psychologists believed that List was going through a midlife crisis, but, as the prosecution pointed out, that was no excuse for unaliving 5 innocent people. The jury found John List guilty, and a judge sentenced him to 5 life terms in a New Jersey prison. In an interview in 2002, List said he didn't unalive himself after unaliving his own family because he felt that would prevent him from getting to heaven. All List wanted was to reunite with his wife, mother, and children in the afterlife, where he believed there would be no pain or suffering. John List died in prison in 2008 at age 82. Thank you for watching. For more true crime stories, follow my co-host Child Case Podcast with Sylvia Pradia, where she covers child abuse cases.